Hi, and welcome to this latest immigration law conversation video. I'm once again joined by Laurence Chester of Alphabet Social Work. Laurence is an independent social worker, and this is his second video with me. So, Laurence, thank you so much for coming back a second time. And I didn't.
Oh, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the people who watch your podcasts.
I know people really enjoyed our first video, but for people who didn't see it, tell us a bit about you and what you do.
Okay, so I was the first person in the country to get a master's degree in social work with unaccompanied minors. And I don't say that to show off. It was in 1995, but this area, which is ridiculous, there were no books written about them, and the whole immigration issue in this country was not something that was in the forefront of everybody's minds. It just used to occur every so often. Since about 2000, since I wrote my dissertation in 95, things have exploded in the field of immigration.
Yeah.
And I suppose my trajectory has been that I ended up, because in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed person is king, or man is king, people turned to me for advice and guidance at the outset. And I ended up sharing government groups and representing the government in discussions in Albania around a safe returns program, which has now, in a completely different version, actually come about. Mine was a bit more sympathetic, I would say, to the people subject to it. And so, you know, it's been a long journey, but now I really enjoy using my experiences both within public law outline, you know, mainstream social work, whatever, and to be able to help the court understand the situations families we work with are in. You know, I don't know much about immigration law, but I am able to assist the court in being able to understand what's going on in a family.
And that's perhaps a helpful jumping off point in terms of reports for immigration cases, just to give people a flavour. What's the sort of cases you regularly report on? Because sometimes I think with independent social workers, immigration solicitors and representatives might have a narrow perspective of the sort of cases they get involved in. So, yeah.
Wow, you know what? I should have done it already, but I haven't. I was thinking about writing down the different types of cases I do, because they are very varied. Yesterday, I was talking to a family where the children are in Ethiopia and the parents are here and they want to get the children over. I've worked all the way from that to elderly relatives in this country who came over perhaps before COVID, ended up staying here, and now the Home Office want to send them back and they're ill and they want to stay with their family and they're elderly. So I write reports about that. I write reports about people who are threatened with deportation. And some social workers feel uncomfortable with the kind of clients I'm writing these reports for. But in actual fact, my focus is on the children and the family. If somebody is a perpetrator of an offence that is disgraceful, and so the Home Office want to deport them, that's not my issue. My issue is the children are being punished as well. And they may have a loving relationship with this parent. So it's a matter of me not making a judgment on it, but giving the relevant information to the judge so that the judge can factor in all of these elements. And, you know, Section 55, what really gets me is when the Home Office say, we have undertaken our duties to consider Section 55, yet they don't evidence in any way, shape or form how this was done. Like, do they even spell the names of the children correctly? You know, they certainly never speak to them, which is probably a good thing. But I don't see where they've considered any evidence. And they might say, well, it's on the, you know, responsibility of the applicant. But I say they are part of the UK government, whose primary responsibility is to make sure children are not harmed. And so therefore, it should be their responsibility to ensure that information is gained. However, but, you know, that's an advocacy position. So a wide range of cases, all sorts of cases.
That's helpful. And just in relation to, you said the first thing you did was like a family reunion case where
Yeah.
children are abroad. Will you speak when you do a case where part of the family are abroad? Will you speak online to the family members abroad as well as part of?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I do quite a lot of this work for Sheffield Hallam University project. They do pro bono work constantly with people, and they're a wonderful place.
Yeah, no, the Refugee Rights Hub. I've been involved in
Yeah,
training them and doing work for them, and a wonderful, yeah,
wonderful people. Yeah,
organization.
and sometimes I work with them to get the UN involved to go and do a visit to family, because sometimes I'm seeing children who are on the verge. Like one case we had was a child who was very ill, and the family and they were kids, they didn't know what to do. So between us, we got the UN to go round. It's very interesting but quite desperate work at times.
Absolutely. Throughout our conversation, I might throw in some law for people. And you talked about the duty in relation to Section 55. I'd remind people of that helpful reported decision from Mr. Justice McCluskey when he was president, the JO case. And the head note of JO says the duty imposed by Section 55 of the 2009 Act requires the decision maker to be properly informed of the position of a child affected by the discharge of an immigration function. Thus equipped, the decision maker must conduct a careful examination of all relevant information and factors. And one of the things we can do in making sure the decision maker is properly informed is instruct an independent social worker. I want to come to an issue that seems to have come to the fore recently. I shared online, and I think you reposted it actually before Christmas, a case from the Court of Appeal called NC. And that was in relation to the rule of whether there are very significant obstacles to integration. Now, that relates to adults. That's an over 18 rule. It used to be in 276 ADE. It's now in Appendix Private Life. And the Court of Appeal talk about there, that was somebody who had a subjective fear of going back to St. Kitts. She actually had a couple of children as well. And they talk there about the need for objective evidence of how somebody would fare if they go back. How can you report on a case involving somebody going back in that situation where they're saying there are very significant obstacles? What's your perspective in a very significant obstacles to integration case?
Well, I mean, I can. I don't know if I'm unique in this, because I helped the Home Office write the definition of integration in 2004. I was part of the working group committees, chaired one of them for children and families on, defining integration for migrants. So they've updated it in 2019, and it's only added digital to it, people's access to digital means of communication and so on. But other than that, it's exactly the same, pretty much. So yes, I can. And it actually coincides with, in social work, we do something called the assessment triangle, which has 3 elements to it. And one is family and environment, parenting, and child development. Let me get the exact thing for you. It's one side of the triangle is about parenting capacity, which looks at basic safety, emotional warmth, stability, etc. Then family and environmental factors, and then about child's developmental needs. And all of these relate to integration, because if they aren't there, then if a family is being asked to return to a country where they don't have access to adequate facilities, then it comes into that assessment. Now, in terms of significant obstacles, I urge people to look at Integration Matters 2019, where there are markers and indicators, and they categorize the different elements of what they consider to be integration. And that includes things like, so employment, housing, education, health. I'll go through them quickly. Then social connections, then language and culture, safety and stability, and rights and citizenship. So those headings are really good reference points. And although without a country expert report, I can't give a definitive view about whether the person is right to be feeling the way they do. Like if they tell me I can't get work in that country, they won't employ me, I can't say, so therefore he can't find work. I can say he feels he can't find work. And then it's up to the solicitor to choose whether they want to get a country expert to give some veracity to that. But I do tell the client themselves, find some evidence, see if there's any headlines in the local papers, whatever, find anything.
I think those headlines in terms of immigration are helpful guides. When a solicitor is writing a witness statement with the client in terms of addressing whether they could integrate, and things like this are also dealt with in the Home Office private life guidance. Obviously, your report will be important in respect to that. And then I think you really bring a helpful point of marrying your report of the subjective concerns of the individual with the situation on the ground, whether that's through a reputable country expert, and there are lists on EIN, the Electronic Immigration Network. It's freely available, where you can select your country and see the experts. Or if an expert is too expensive, and obviously funding, these are our council of perfection if we had, but resources are limited. So country reports, newspaper reports showing how, if somebody's a single mum with mental health difficulties, in certain countries they might be stigmatized, shunned, not have access to employment or childcare. Those are significant factors. Anything? Yeah, I was going to say, anything else you want to comment on adults before we go on to best?
I just wanted to add to that. If you think, for example, there's two things I want to add. Number one is, if somebody's got dementia and there are no resources back in that country, then get somebody in the family to phone up a local hospital, speak to a doctor, get a kind of, I don't know if I'd have to be notarized or not, that's your area, and get a letter saying that we acknowledge, in this country, if this person was to come here, we could not meet their needs. Now, it may not be overwhelming and cool, but immigration is about on balance. So it adds some weight to the balance rather than the Home Office, who often just say spurious things without any evidence at all. But so there's that bit.
That's really helpful. I'll come back to that. Go on, say your second thing.
And the next thing very quickly is, sometimes people don't realize, especially elderly people. So like when I speak to Indian elders, I say, what's the problem in going back? I have no family, is often the reason. I then ask, do you have electricity at home? No. Do you get flooded in the rainy season? Yes. And they hadn't factored that into being part of the obstacles that they have going back, the mundane day-to-day stuff. Because when they were there, they just got on with it. But now they're back and they have deteriorated. They couldn't deal with those things, but they haven't always thought about it. So I try and tease that out as well.
I think that's so helpful, isn't it? Drawing out those things which people, for the client, they may not think to mention because they've just been a routine part of life, but actually in the case, they are a significant obstacle then if they're going back alone to integrating. And I think the point you made earlier is really important. With the very significant obstacles to integration rule, we often have to rely on that, where you've got, say, a parent or a grandparent who arrived before COVID, has become part of the family now, health has deteriorated. Adult dependent relative applications are only for entry clearance. So if we're applying in country, the rule is the very significant obstacles. And I always advise people to do the research. I did a case this week where they were cross-examined on what research they'd done in terms of abilities of care homes or live-in carers, and whether they could meet the needs of somebody with the early stages of vascular dementia. So what you say is bang on there in terms of that.
Including, Adam, the carers often in countries like India are not trained to dispense medication.
Mm-hmm.
And that often is overlooked, because without that, they might find carers, but if they don't have the training and have the certification and all the rest of it about, it's not appropriate for them to be caring for a vulnerable elderly person. So,
No, absolutely. And those are the things people need to then get the country expert or the country evidence on, because obviously your role is not as a country expert. And what we don't is a social worker's report devalued because they've strayed into areas they shouldn't be. So that,
absolutely. And if I say something, I always will, put a part, like I will say, I ask the question and this is their response, although I cannot give an expert view on this. But it's additional material for the judge to think about.
No, that's really helpful. Let's we've covered adults. Let's switch to children, the best interests of children, we've talked about Section 55. Section 55 applies to children in the United Kingdom, although within Appendix FM we have Gen 3.3, which talks about any child affected by the decision. So a family lawyer would be guided by the Children Act and the Welfare Checklist. How do you use things like the Welfare Checklist to assess the best interests of children?
When people employ me to do my reports, they're not employing Laurence Chester, they're employing Laurence Chester, the social worker. So I have to, so I will always reflect the social work approach. And that is, we use the welfare checklist. At its worst, it's at least a really useful guide for the judge, even if he doesn't feel bound by it in the slightest. It provides nationally accepted headings for the criteria that have to be considered. So even on that basis, it's important. And, you know, getting the wishes and feelings of the children is the best thing I do about my job. Families end up in tears often because they never realize their kids realize what was going on, or that their children, and grandparents hear their grandchildren talking about them in ways they don't usually, especially teenagers who might be a little bit stroppy, but when they know it's real, they tell it how it is, you know, and they're lovely kids, and I love doing that. And a social work gripe of mine is when social workers said, the children said that, this, that, that. I said, no, inverted commas. I put them down word for word exactly what they say. And the reason for that is because you can tell they're not coached. Children, you know, number one answer, what is it you like about school? Break time. Now, parents aren't going to tell children to say that.
Absolutely.
You know, and my favorite answer, if you had 3 wishes, it was, I want like 1 million sweets, 2 million sweets, and 3 million sweets, you know, rather than I want my dad home, I want my grandparent, or whatever. Sometimes it's that, but with young children, they're never going to say that unless they're coached, you know, so it helps give a perspective.
I think that having the authentic voice of the child reflected within the proceedings is so important. I think you've highlighted an important point. In immigration law, we're not bound by the welfare checklist in the Children Act, and I know we've been chatting about this, but it is something that provides a useful heading again for you to report. It's obviously recognised and used in family cases, and they're helpful headings, and helpfully a guide perhaps when people are collating evidence to think of those headings as well. It caused me when I was thinking about the welfare checklist to go back to the sort of key case when it comes to best interests of children, the foundation stone at ZH Tanzania, and what Lady Hale said there. And she talked about when this paragraph 29 of ZH, she said, in assessing whether it's reasonable for a child to live in another country, relevant to this will be the level of the child's integration in this country and the length of absence from the other country, where and with whom the child is to live, and the arrangements for looking after the child in the other country, and the strength of the child's relationships with parents or other family members, which will be severed if this child has to move away. So again, another helpful framework of factors, you know, to focus on in presenting a case where you're arguing that the best interests of the child or the reasonableness of the child leaving the United Kingdom should determine the outcome. Anything you want to add, Laurence, in respect
Just something about children with additional needs. I'm dealing with a number of cases where children have autism.
Massive.
And I even saw a judge who said, well, some children with autism are fine going on an aeroplane. Now, I want to know when they think it's okay to remove a family where a child has autism, or in this case, a single child back to a family in poverty in their home country who has quite serious autism. Surely the welfare checklist may not be binding, but it is close to a criminal offence to send a child with additional needs to a place where they will suffer harm, and you have not bothered to find out if that is the case or not. I mean, that is such a breach of the state's responsibility to vulnerable children that you know, the welfare checklist has to be considered more by the courts with those kind of children.
And if I was an immigration solicitor wanting to instruct you on, say, a family with an autistic child,
Yeah.
what information would you say is essential to get the most out of your report? So what, again, if you, we've talked in previous videos about a letter of instruction. So you've got a good letter of instruction, but if you haven't thought about that, watch our previous video where we talk about that. But in terms of evidence of the child, what sort of things where you've got a child with special needs would be essential to you writing your report?
Right. So first of all, third-party corroborative information is essential. I need to see the diagnosis. Yeah. Otherwise, Home Office will say, "Where's the proof?" A lot of children will, if they're in school or by school age, will have an educational healthcare plan, EHCP. Please check it carefully because they're notorious for being written badly. I'm working on a case where they have put in that the child lives with their father and he doesn't. And it would blow the whole case up because it's, third-party information saying the opposite of what the applicant's saying. So, I had to go back and say to the solicitor, no, and he said, well, Mum's covered it in the thing. I said, no, we have to get it redone. Yeah. So, that's not a criticism of solicitors. It's not the solicitor's world. It's social workers' world. Which is why I would say anytime you've got a case with anybody under the age of 18, really think hard about getting a social worker involved. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that information, basically, very often, for example, this person, one report I've recently written, the church were very involved in helping the family because they were really struggling. Yeah. So let's get those letters from the church, or whether it be from anywhere else. And if there's any school teachers or anybody who want to, people will feel passionately about helping a child with autism when they know it will be clearly harmful for them to be removed. So it's a matter of mentalizing the child's life and thinking who are the important people in that child's life and then trying to get information from them.
No, that's really helpful, Laurence. If people, I'm sure, watching think, ooh, I've got a case that I could get Laurence involved in, how do people reach out to you? How do people get you involved in a case? What should solicitors and legal representatives do? How's the best way to get in touch?
Well, if we're connected on LinkedIn, you can, is it direct message or private message? I don't know.
Message you, whatever it's called.
Whatever. Or Laurence, Laurence, Laurence at alphabetsocialwork.com. Or you can even call me on 07974 800 456. I think you've got the information.
Yeah, and I'm going to put it below the video so people, including Laurence's website. So
yeah, and my website. I always forget about my website.
Can reach out to you and get you involved. Laurence, that's been fantastic. I think we've covered in a short amount of time, adults, children with special needs, best interest assessment, and the relevance of the welfare checklist. So some really helpful stuff for people.
Can I just say, Adam, I've done my first podcast of my own, which I did very badly. It's really for social workers looking at immigration stuff. So I've done one, and I will do others, but they're more geared for social workers who want to help.
No, that's really great, because I know a few people follow me are social workers who get involved in immigration cases. So if you are a social worker, reach out to Laurence to get the link. And if you send me that link, I can include it in the details as well. So people who are social workers who want to think more about the best way to report in immigration cases, they can access your podcast, Laurence. So thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you, Adam. A pleasure. Thank you so much.